So now that we know a little bit about angles, how to name angles, and some things about their measures of angles, we can talk about different types of angles. And the first type we want to talk about is complementary angles. Complementary angles are angles that we can define such as this: two or more angles whose sum is 90 degrees. And sometimes you might reference these, sorry about that, sometimes they might even be called complements of each other. And if I were to draw this for you, what I could do is I could draw a right angle, and I could show that it's a right angle with a box here. I could put a ray here, and angle 1 and angle 2. Now then what I could do is I could say, okay, if these angles are complementary, then the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 90. And so that's what we mean by complementary angles. Another kind of angle of this angle set that we could have are supplementary angles. So complementary angles add up to 90, and supplementary angles are two or more angles whose sum is 180 degrees. And sometimes we refer to those as supplements of each other. And if I were to draw a picture of what that looks like, what I could do is I could go ahead and draw a straight angle and put a ray inside of that straight angle and name the two angles angle 3 and angle 4. Now here we can say that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 180. What I could even do also is I could put another angle in there, another ray, and then I could say that angle 5 plus angle 3 plus angle 4 equals 180. So it could be two angles, it could be more than two angles as well. Adjacent angles are defined as angles that share a side and a vertex. Now a picture of this might be as follows. Let's draw one big angle, and let's put a ray inside of that, and let's call this angle 6 and angle 7. Now angle 6 and angle 7 really don't have any unique properties about them other than they are next to each other because they share this side and they share this vertex here. Now, a linear pair. Well, linear means line, and so pair means two. Putting those two items together, a linear pair is defined as two angles that form a line. We can say then that a linear pair really are basically supplementary angles. And so a picture of that would look a lot like what supplementary angles up top look like. So here's a line, and here's angle 8 and 9. And angle 8 and angle 9 form a linear pair because they're going to make that line, and they're supplementary, meaning they add up to 180 degrees. And our final definition is vertical angles. And vertical angles are angles formed by two intersecting lines. What we also know about vertical angles is vertical angles are congruent. So here's a picture of what vertical angles look like. If I drew two intersecting lines, and if I said, okay, this is angle 1 and this is angle 2, I could say that not only are angle 1 and angle 2 vertical angles, but angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. If I were to put these other two angles in, angles 3 and 4, Angle 3 and angle 4 are also vertical angles, and they are also going to be congruent as well. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. So in our first example that I want to look at with you, in the figures to the right, we're going to name a pair of angles that are complementary, supplementary, and adjacent if they exist. So let's go ahead and do that. So complementary angles are angles that have to add up to 90. So do you see two angles or more than two angles in the pictures that add up to 90? Well, they don't have to be necessarily next to each other, but we do see that this 39-degree angle and this 51-degree angle do add up to 90. So let's name those two angles. So two complements would be angle Q, P, Y, and angle H, F, G, because they add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180. Well, there's three angles in the picture, and actually there's a fourth angle, this big angle, the 76 and 51 put together, but nothing adds up to 180, so there aren't any. Now, adjacent angles are angles that share a side and a vertex. And these two angles, the 76 and 51, they're adjacent because they share FH and they share vertex F. So we can go ahead and name those two angles. So those angles are, again, angle EFH and angle HFG. So one thing above that we used is I used the word complement and supplement. And here we see that in this particular example. Find the complement and the supplement of 12 degrees. Well, what that really looks like is if I want to find the complement of 12 degrees, let's say I had a 12-degree angle, what could I put next to it or away from it that would make those two angles add up to 90? Well, to find the complement, I would take 90 minus 12, and I would get a complement of 78 degrees. That's the complement. Now the supplement means 180. So let's say I have a 12-degree angle, and I have to figure out what goes next to it so that these two angles add up to 180. So 180 minus 12 gives me 168. So that's how we find the complement and the supplement. Alright, well, on to the next page. We have 6 angles in this picture, but we only know 2. And we have to find the other 4 angles. So let's use what we know and let's fill in the diagram. We know that angle 2 is 35 degrees. Now because of that, angle 2 and angle 5 are actually vertical angles. So that means that angle 5 is also 35 degrees, and so I can go ahead and fill that in to my table here. And we also know that angle 4 is 70 degrees. And so, if angle 4 is 70, well, that's a vertical angle, meaning it's congruent to angle 1, so angle 1 is 70 degrees. And so what that leaves us with is it leaves us with 2 angles that we don't know the measure of, angle 3 and angle 6. But what we do know is they are congruent. And what we also know is that those 2 angles are a part of supplementary angles in many different ways. Angle 5, 6, and 1 should all add up to 180. So should 6, 1, and 2, and 2, 3, and 4, and so on. So angle 6 is going to have to be, 75 degrees, meaning angle 3 is 75 degrees, because that would make things add up to 180, angle 5, 6, and 1, and actually all 6 angles put together add up to 360, which is the number of degrees in a circle. So I can go and fill in my chart. So how does algebra come into play? Well, if angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary in this example, that means the two angles add up to 180. Now, we're given angle 1, we're given angle 2. So if I were to write an equation for this, I could write that angle 1, which is 4x plus 2, and angle 2, which is 6x minus 12, they have a sum of 90. So if I work the algebra here, 4x and 6x put together is 10x, and 2 minus 12 is negative 10. That equals 90. I can add 10 to both sides and divide by 10, and I get an answer of 10 for x. Now if I've done this right, the great thing is everything should check. So if I take that 10 and put it in for x in angle 1 and x in angle 2, let's see what we get. Well, this would give us 4 times 10 plus 2. 4 times 10 plus 2 for angle 1, and that makes 42. And angle 2 is going to give us 6 times 10 minus 12, which turns out to be 48. So angle 1 and angle 2 are different. Is an angle bisector in this existence situation? The answer is no. Because angle 1, well, the measure of angle 1 does not equal the measure of angle 2. That's the reason why. So an angle bisector has to have two congruent angles, and we don't have that in this situation. One more example. The measure of an angle is 4 times greater than its supplement. Find the measure of the two angles. Okay, so the measure of an angle is 4 times greater than its supplement. So we've got supplementary angles. We have one angle that's x, and the other one is 4 times its supplement, which in this case is going to be 4x. Pictures help a lot, so these two angles have to add up to 180. So if I add them together, that's 5x equals 180. Dividing by 5, I get x equals 36, but I haven't answered the question. It says find the measure of the two angles. So I'm going to take that 36 and I'm going to put it in for x into both angles. So this angle would be 36. And 4 times 36 gives us 144. And if I've done it right, those two angles should add up to 180. And they do. Hooray. That concludes the types of angles that we can deal with. And there's more out there that you'll learn as well. But that concludes the video. See you next time.